You may have seen my video where I talk about the Nikon Z6 Mark III. I used the camera for about a week. It was a rental, so I was just trying it out to see what Nikon has to offer. And some people liked the video and others did not. But before we get started, like this video, hit the subscribe button and consider joining the channel. Channel members get exclusive access to Filmmaker Alchemy, behind the scenes lessons and insights on the business of video production. Learn how to turn your content into gold. Now, I hope this is obvious, but I by no means think that my opinions are gospel, that my opinion is the only right opinion and everyone else is wrong. If you like the Nikon Z6 Mark III, I want you to love it. I want you to shoot with it because realistically, nowadays, any camera can take amazing photos and can create great video. However, the Nikon Z6 Mark III just wasn't the camera for me, and that's why I rented it to actually see, is this something that I want, that I'm willing to trade my current equipment for, to upgrade to a Z6 Mark III? And for me, it really wouldn't be an upgrade. Yes, I would be getting additional benefits and features that are exclusive to the Z6 Mark III, but I'd also be trading off and losing other things that I particularly like about my Lumix S5 Mark II. But I really can't gauge that equation by just watching other people's content and other people's opinions. I really have to draw those opinions for myself. But I'm not saying that what I think is right and that you're wrong, or that everyone else who likes it is terrible and this camera sucks. That's not what I'm saying. However, there are some deal breakers when it comes to the Z6 Mark III. For me, just me personally, and that may or may not apply to you. It may give you insight, may give you encouragement to go try some other camera that you've been looking at, wondering, is it worth the upgrade, the side grade? Do I ditch Sony for Canon? Do I switch from Canon to Lumix? Do I go Nikon? Do I look at Fuji or Blackmagic? There's so many options out there. And really, you want the right tool for the job, certainly, but you also want the right tool for you. There's a lot of things about the Z6 Mark III that just didn't click for me and how I like to use a camera. One of the biggest ones is the shadow noise. I like cleaner images right from the camera. And you could say that, well, to get the cleanest images from the Z6 Mark III, you need to shoot ProRes or you need to shoot RAW. However, that's not a trade-off I'm willing to make. I don't want those massive file sizes just to get cleaner shadows, because I can get those cleaner shadows on other cameras shooting in H.264, H.265. So I think there's something going on with the Z6 Mark III that, yeah, the shadows are a bit noisier from that faster sensor partially stacked. So the technology itself lends it to having a little bit, less dynamic range, a little bit noisier shadows, and that's okay. If you have workarounds for that or you don't mind, that's fine. But for me, I just like cleaner images right from the camera, shooting something like H.264, H.265. I don't want to have to take on enormous file sizes by shooting ProRes or RAW just to get cleaner shadows like I'm used to on the Lumix S5 Mark II. And again, maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe you want less rolling shutter, less skew, less jello, less jiggle, less wobble, all those things. It's great. The Z6 Mark III sensor is quite fast, certainly faster than other cameras like the S5 Mark II, or even, I guess, really you could compare it to anything. There's, I think Cine D, they do quite a few lab tests where you can compare different cameras. They don't have everything in their database, but there's certainly a lot of things that you can look at there if sensor speed is a priority for you, or dynamic range, low light capabilities, all that stuff. Each of these cameras, each of these devices has its strengths, and oftentimes those strengths come with some weaknesses as well, just because that's the nature of these trade-offs. The technology lends itself to favoring one thing while sacrificing something else, and that's okay. The other thing about the Z6 Mark III is that I just am not a huge fan of the button layout and just the way the buttons and dials are positioned and the lack thereof. There's certain features like that autofocus, manual focus switch on the Lumix cameras that I've just fallen in love with, and it's become part of the way that I shoot. So to go with a camera that doesn't have that, all of a sudden, that's a huge kind of deal breaker for me, because now I can't do certain things on set, on a production that I'm currently doing with my current equipment. And honestly, maybe those sacrifices in terms of the shadow noise and some of the button layout stuff that I'm not a huge fan of, maybe that would be worth it if I were getting something incredibly different in terms of a feature set, something like internal NDs, right? Built-in NDs along with stabilization. That is kind of the Oh my gosh, I don't know. It's just like the unicorn, I think, that we're all kind of waiting for. Just one of these cameras that'll put built-in NDs. And maybe that would be, worth it, taking that trade-off or making that sacrifice. There's always, those decisions that you have to make. But something like 6K 60, is not a big enough feature for me personally and the stuff that I do. Maybe it is for you. Again, everyone has their priorities. So picking the right tool for you is always going to be your best bet. And really the only way to do it is to try it. Either get your hands on it, ask a friend, get a rental. I don't know, maybe you do the buy and the return kind of thing if that's your style. But for me, I just wanted to rent it, do it the right way, spend a week with the camera and see what I thought, give my honest opinions. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat things or gloss things over. And really, I wasn't even all that critical of the Z6 Mark III. It's just certain people are going to have their reaction when you criticize the thing that they love, while other people might celebrate and enjoy that. Like, yeah, I agree. The same, I think the same thing. That's just the nature of these things. We become very loyal to the things that we buy. We have an affinity for these brands, even though they don't care about us at all, really, in the grand scheme of things. They just want us to buy their stuff. So they're going to always talk, the brands are always going to talk about the features and how great they are, hoping that we buy them up. And in that process, people are going to have pick their favorite, and they're going to have good reasons for picking those favorites. I would never say that it's biased or blindness, or you're just drinking the Kool-Aid or soaking up the propaganda. It's not like that. I choose Lumix cameras for very particular reasons, and I have good reasons for that. While other people might favor Sony or Canon or Nikon or Blackmagic or Fuji or the list goes on. Everyone has a reason for why they pick what they pick. And it just goes back to when I was shooting Lumix when it was micro four thirds only, right? Lumix now has full frame cameras that have phase detect autofocus, but for the longest time, people would criticize Lumix as it's not full frame, bad low light, no good autofocus. And I would agree with those things, but there's also things that I loved about the Lumix cameras, like the GH5, GH6, and now GH7 for micro four thirds. But obviously, I really enjoy their full frame lineup as well. And at that time, for as much as I loved the Lumix cameras, all the way back to the GH1, there are things I loved about the Lumix cameras, but I also wasn't going to discount or neglect all the great things that Sony was doing in terms of low light and autofocus. Yes, you can have your priorities. Maybe it's resolution, maybe it's frame rates, maybe it's dynamic range, maybe it's ease of use, maybe it's the size, maybe it's the weight. There's so many things that can be the reason why you buy something. And I think it's okay to lean into those reasons for why you like something, but you don't have to hate everything else just because it's different or does something a little bit better or maybe not quite as good. I certainly don't hate Nikon. I don't hate the Z6 Mark III. It's just not the camera for me. And that's okay because I have the camera for me right now. That's the Lumix S5 Mark II. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the Lumix GH7. I'm getting a lot of work done. There are plenty of people out there who will shoot on Sony and Canon and Nikon, and it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's the images, it's the footage. Are you able to do the project to your liking? Are you able to achieve your goals? If there's some limitation with your camera or your equipment, that I think, if that limitation is holding you back from achieving something that you want to do, that's where I think it's good to look elsewhere and see, okay, maybe what I'm using isn't the right tool for the job. Certainly, that was the case with the Lumix cameras years ago when people wanted to shoot, everything on a gimbal. If you don't have good autofocus, it's really hard to use a gimbal properly because you just, as a solo operator, one person team, you're not going to have all the great, resources to get good quality focus if you're only doing manual focus by yourself, trying to do a gimbal. It's just really difficult. So honestly, if that's the type of work you do, totally makes sense. Get a camera that prioritizes autofocus. But autofocus is not something you need. It's not a requirement. You don't have to have it. There's certainly plenty of cinema cameras that have terrible autofocus or don't even autofocus at all, and you can still make great footage. So it comes down to the projects you're doing, how you like to shoot, what your personal preference is. And I think there's room for all of it. And what's great, what I love about Nikon is that they've actually embraced video seriously. They've created actual hybrids finally, where they're promoting the video features, saying how great these are, both for photo and for video. And that's what I love to see. I want to see more of that from Canon, from Sony, from Lumix, from all of them, because something that I've started touching on recently that maybe is controversial, but photography in terms of creating great photos has kind of peaked. You can create great photos on your smartphone using portrait mode and some of those advanced features, as well as using any modern camera, even any old camera from the DSLR days. 10-year-old cameras still can take great photos. So if you're looking for a camera that takes pictures and does that well, almost anything from the last decade should fit the bill. It's going to do a decent job. Yes, certain cameras have better specs, better features, higher resolution, faster burst rates, blackout free, global shutter, all that stuff. But if you just want to take a great picture, you can do that pretty much with any camera nowadays. However, video is a totally different conversation. Video is a little bit more complicated. You got audio in addition to the visuals. You've got moving pictures, so you have to take into things like overheating, what are the inputs, the outputs, what's it like to use the camera, what are the files like, the file sizes, storage, editing, all that stuff. It's a little bit more complicated than one picture. You've got 24 pictures every second, or maybe it's 30, maybe it's 60, maybe it's 120. Lots of frames to handle, and you want them all to be good and easy to use and fit in your workflow. Thankfully, most of these companies have figured out that this is a great selling point. They're promoting video at the forefront of their marketing, of that feature set. 6K 60, 8K 60 in some crazy cases, continuous autofocus for video, all this amazing stuff. They're putting it out there, talking about their log profiles, the dynamic range, maybe even in some cases now you can shoot raw video or ProRes in a hybrid, in a photography camera. So I'm glad that we finally entered this age where the hybrids are truly hybrids and they're marketing the video features, and we can actually talk about them as video cameras in addition to their photography capabilities. So long ago, and even recently, people were saying just, stop buying photo cameras to shoot video. But there's a lot of good reasons why you might want a hybrid camera that can do both photo and video and do both well. So for me, I'm really comparing what's it like to shoot the video on all these different devices. What do I personally prefer? And maybe that's a good reason for you to look at what I'm doing and say, hey, I can learn some lessons from that and apply it to mine. I certainly wouldn't recommend, just copy and pasting what someone else is doing, because everyone has their own style. Everyone has their own preferences and goals. So you can learn from other people while not copying or straight up imitating, or you can look at what someone's doing and say, hey, that may work for them, but I'm going to intentionally do the opposite because I'm a different type of person. I have different types of projects, so I'm going to do it my own way. And I think that's what all this is about, sharing our opinions, sharing our perspective so we can make the best choices for ourselves. If we're just buying blindly, going to an Amazon page or going over to B&H, looking at the specs and saying, oh, this one does 8K, it's the best, I'm going to buy it. And then another one comes along and this one's 12K. It's the best, I'm going to buy it. You're constantly shifting, you're reprioritizing, you're jumping ship, switching brands, paying a lot to get a bunch of gear just to, sell it all, to switch somewhere else. There's a lot of juggling and shuffling going around. And you'll see this from time to time, people over on Reddit asking if they made the right choice or should they switch systems. And I think a lot of it is just from a lack of information, a lack of understanding. If everyone's just looking at the marketing, the features, it's very tempting. It's very eye-catching. Oh, wow, this sounds and looks so amazing. That's the Z6 Mark III on paper for me. These features look great. Everyone's saying how great this camera is. But the moment I actually use it for myself, I start realizing all those fine little nitpick things that personally I just would say, yeah, those are kind of all summed up deal breakers for me. I'm not as interested in the features on that product page. I'm more interested in the day-to-day operation of the device. What's it like to actually use it and how does it feel to me? No other person can really tell me that. They can tell me what their opinion is, but they can't tell me my own. And I would say the same thing to you. I'll tell you my opinion, but I can't tell you your own. It's just the nature of it, right? But being a little bit more informed, knowing those limitations, knowing what bothered somebody else, something to look out for, something to try. Maybe there's something that I missed or I got wrong. Someone can certainly inform me and say, hey, actually, this, and then I can learn as well. So I just really like talking about cameras in general, but from more of I guess the opposite perspective of like, you have to buy it because it's the best thing ever. There's certainly plenty of those people out there who those specs, those features, that's the hype. And, maybe it comes with like but this one little thing, but it's not that big of a deal. Like, get it, it's great. I'm more kind of like want to save my money. I don't want to just spend all the time buying the new thing. I want to look at new things and be a little bit more skeptical and be a little bit more realistic and say, do I actually need this newest, latest, greatest thing? Or is it gas? Right? We all know what gas is. Gear acquisition syndrome, wanting to buy the next thing just because it's new, Well, maybe take a step back, look at it, approach it from, if you have something that's working, if it's giving you everything you need already, why do you need the new thing? Unless it actually introduces something new and what you actually want or need. Companies are very good at spinning the marketing in a way to make you think you want and need all these things, when if you actually took a step back, you'd say, oh, but really what I want is internal NDs. That's for me, right? I want those internal NDs. That's a selling feature. That's a prime point to put on that product page. Hype the internal NDs, please. Let's make it happen. Global shutter maybe is in that ballpark, but certainly not for an extremely high price point. We got to bring those prices down to make it a little bit more realistic for someone who wants to buy multiple cameras, not just one, but if you're shooting video, you want multiple angles usually. Sometimes you can do things single cam, and that's totally fine too. But if you're buying a bunch of cameras, keeping the overall cost down, more cameras, is more lenses, is more batteries, is more memory cards, all the costs always add up, and there's that creep. Plus, you got to think of cases and storing all this stuff and how you're traveling with it, more support, more tripods, etc. Lights, you know the list. There's a lot of equipment. You can always buy more stuff. So taking that step back and thinking, is what I have working? Is it doing a great job? Because if you take a few steps further back, you can realize there's cinema cameras from 10 years ago that are now pennies on the dollar, sold used, secondhand, eBay or elsewhere, that shot feature films that you could buy now for a fraction of the price of what they used to be. $50,000 cameras now only $5,000, maybe even cheaper, depending on where you're looking. Cinema cameras from Canon, cinema cameras from Red. What else you got? You got some old Panasonic cinema cameras that you can scoop up. So just because something is new and it, yes, might have the latest technology, doesn't always mean it's the best or the right tool for you. Maybe you'd be better off sticking with what you have, or even just looking on the used market. If there's something you really wanted, maybe 10 years ago, think back 10 years, what did you want? What was the greatest at that point in time? And could you have it now? And would you even want it anymore? These are things I'm always thinking about and constantly questioning when it comes to making new purchases. Do I actually need the newest, or am I good with what I have? And even if I had the newest 10 years ago, would I still appreciate it to this day like I did back then? Because that same thing is going to apply 10 years from now. Buy what you need, try before you buy, rent it, give it a shot. Then you can actually inform your own opinions and have strong reasons for why you like one thing over another. There's always a good reason for it. I don't think everyone's just blindly buying up things and saying, oh, I like this. People have reasons for what they like, but those reasons are always different from person to person. So for me, the Z6 Mark III, not my choice, but that doesn't mean it's a bad camera.